What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. If you're looking for Champions League reaction, I have a whole different video dedicated exclusively to that, talking about PSG and their triumph over Inter Milan. So go find the video on the channel for that as well. This Weekend Roundup video, I'm going to cover everything else that happened this weekend. Primarily the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. It is a 5-0 win for Cruz Azul over the Vancouver Whitecaps. I first just want to applaud Vancouver for getting this far. Nobody would have believed this would have happened 6 months ago, 4 months ago, even, when the season was starting. And they didn't just get to the final. They knocked out two big-time Liga MX teams to do it. They did not lose in Mexico until this final, and they beat Inter Miami to do it. The fact that a team like the Whitecaps, who, by the way, don't have one of their designated players and one of the best players in franchise history in Ryan Gauld throughout this journey, and we're missing Sebastian Berhalter for the final, of course, he was not going to make any difference in this game. They got thoroughly outplayed. But their ability to do this is a testament to MLS's depth. It shows how close these two leagues are becoming. Because that is one of the defining characteristics is we know the top MLS teams can play with anybody on the continent. But to have Vancouver show up and do this and be this good means something. Even if they didn't win the competition. The game itself, there really isn't much to say. If you're going to go into Mexico without one of your key players and beat a Cruz Azul team that there's been some really interesting parallels with the journeys these two teams have been on since they hired their coaches at around the same time. You can't be falling asleep on throw-ins. You can't be sloppy playing out of the back. It got bad early, and it didn't get any better for the Whitecaps. It just kept getting worse. The other part of this is the broader, larger picture of what it means for MLS. If you go back to the last 4 years, last 4 Champions League / Champions Cups, whatever you want to call it, Seattle wins one. First MLS team to do it in the modern era. They have a good opportunity presented to them. They take advantage of it. LAFC then are favorites to heavy favorites the next season. Can't get it done. Then the Columbus Crew have their opportunity. And you've got the food poisoning situation. Maybe that goes differently if they're actually healthy and feeling okay. So there is an asterisk by that one. And then you've got the Whitecaps with the opportunity to pull off the upset and get MLS back on top. If you just take those 4 in a vacuum, MLS should have won at least 2 of those 4. And Liga MX was up 2-1. MLS needed the Whitecaps to pull off the upset to kind of make up for the 1 or 2 they should have won that they didn't. And obviously that did not happen. It's not a criticism of the Whitecaps, but it is a commentary on the Liga MX teams who have won this competition recently. It's not Club America. It's not Guadalajara. It's not Chivas. It's not Pumas. And now you have Cruz Azul, one of your other big-time clubs, who goes and wins it after a couple other sort of mid-tier Mexican teams were able to win it and beat some of the best teams in MLS to do so. The teams that at times were considered, I will always, and argued then, incorrectly for the most part, although the Crew had a case. And like I said, there are extenuating circumstances there. But considered the best teams on the continent. And they couldn't get the job done. So you were hoping the Whitecaps could make up for that? They couldn't. Now, having LAFC get to the Club World Cup, win that playoff, does matter. And it matters in this conversation. It helps soften the blow a little bit. It gives MLS something to stand on. It's an important step to get 3 teams into that competition. We'll see how they actually do. To get that opportunity in Steve Cherundolo's last season, to get that money going into the league, that's all good things. I do want to acknowledge that. It does matter here in this conversation. Because you can't let... You at least got something. And Liga MX had to respond, and boy did they through Cruz Azul in this game. But it is frustrating if you're MLS that you had an opportunity to really make this even and change the conversation around this tournament. And it was presented as favorably as it probably could be. And it just didn't happen. So the conversation is still, can the MLS teams actually get over the finish line here? It has happened once, but that is not good enough to get where this league is needing to go. And especially when you've got the owners in places like Miami saying we need more money to do this, the Whitecaps are showing that's not necessarily the case. Because the teams that have actually gotten to the final here, at least these two, talking about Seattle, the Seattle team that won it, and this Vancouver team, not the most expensive rosters in the world, not the most expensive rosters in MLS. LAFC, Columbus, spent more money, came up short. So there is always so much validity to that. And the fact that Vancouver went through Miami to get here, there's something to be said about that too, from a this is a money issue thing, because I don't necessarily buy that. But congratulations to LAFC for getting into the Club World Cup. Congratulations Cruz Azul tying Club America for the most Continental / CONCACAF Champions League / Champions Cup victories, whatever you want to refer to this thing as. The other thing I want to mention real quickly, speaking of the Club World Cup, and speaking of the Seattle Sounders, they held a protest of sorts, wore t-shirts ahead of their game this weekend against Minnesota United, voicing their displeasure with the pay distribution for the upcoming Club World Cup. This is a MLS collective bargaining agreement issue above all else, because the CBA was signed before anybody was thinking about playing a massive tournament with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line in the middle of the summer between club teams. Because that's not how this works. But money talks, and so here we are. So I did want to give a little bit of background there. That's where this is coming from for the most part, is MLS just wasn't prepared for this, basically. But I want to use that to talk about a larger issue here and to set the stage for this, because this tournament's going to become a much bigger topic of conversation over the next couple of weeks as it kicks off, gets underway, and we see what this thing actually looks like, when there isn't that much going on outside of it on the men's side of the sport. This is obviously a money grab. There is no other way to explain it, because players who just played an entire season should not be going to play in another competitive tournament in the summer before a World Cup, and one of the few summers they actually are supposed to get off. This is objectively a bad idea from a health standpoint. Nobody's arguing that. And so the people that are benefiting from this are FIFA, the clubs, owners, Gianni Infantino, right? All of these other parties. Not the players. Which is part of the reason why you had to make the payout so big and the prize money so big, is to get people to care about this, because they have no reason to. And it's been a bit of a mess. And we're going to see how much people actually care and what kind of teams are out there for the PSGs and Manchester Cities of the world. But this is another angle to that same problem. That the larger narrative surrounding this tournament. That the basically what Seattle's saying is we want to be compensated like the rest of these, not literally, but if other teams are being compensated in ways X, Y, and Z, why aren't we? And it's a very fair question. And so it goes back to this idea of how much detailed planning actually went into this. Did we think about all of the ramifications? Do these players actually want to be here? What is this going to look like? And just the general awkwardness and uncomfortableness of it. That nobody is doing this for the players. This is not about the players. And there's only so much they can do about it. And the main thing you can do, the most extreme measure, is to not play. And Rodri has talked about this. And every time you see things like this, it just feels more and more likely that that is eventually where we are heading. I might be wrong about that. Who knows where things go from here, what this tournament actually ends up becoming, and how players feel about it after they participate. Maybe the extra money makes it worth it and they don't really care. But you've already got all of these storylines, the controversy, the frustration, and we haven't even started this thing yet. So it is worth monitoring, and it's part of this bigger conversation because this is another unnecessary addition to the schedule. And the Seattle Sounders players are rightfully wondering why they're not being compensated like that is the case. And let's see how this thing plays out, and whether they're going to take any more drastic steps or if that was kind of that. So that is all for this edition of the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.